Welcome, TV and film addicts. It's Baron and the Doc here for episode 50 of That Reminds Me Of. And today we're talking about the Netflix sensation Squid Game by Hwang Dong-hyuk.
And that's going to be a real feature of this episode, isn't it, Doc? Us mangling every single name of all of the good people in this show.
I reckon we've been leaning into mangling names over several episodes. So
that's a feature of this show in general, isn't it? That we have.
That's right.
And if you haven't listened to this That Reminds Me Of before, this is the podcast and YouTube thingo-majiggo where we talk about shows and the shows that we were reminded of while watching those shows. And there are always spoilers, so beware of those. If those bother you, go watch it first.
The podcast and YouTube thingamajiggo. So that's what we are. I've been trying to define what we're pretending to do here, and that seems like an apt description.
That's all I got. I think it covers it.
Well, it does remind me, pun intended. Is that a pun? It's not a pun, is it? Which I'm just using the same language as our show. But it reminds me that we should be asking people when they're watching us, if you're half enjoying this, hit subscribe wherever it is.
Correct.
Maybe give us a review. We're available on all the channels.
If you love the show, subscribe and like and share with all your friends. I don't know. I always give my daughter crap for that because everything she watches, that's in there. And whenever she's doing her, like her make-believe YouTube channels, which she does, that's like a kid's play thing now to just pretend you've got a YouTube channel.
My goodness.
She reels off like all of those things. And that's just part of the game.
Okay, so maybe that's the first and last time we'll ask people to subscribe. If they like it, they can make up their own mind.
They can be adults and decide for themselves.
Cool. How have you been, Baron?
Yeah, I've been great, Doc. There's things are happening as still, there's work going on, but at the same time, I'm moving further along with my feature development on Locked In. On Sunday, we've got a all-day writer's room session that we're going to be doing, which is going to be fantastic. And then I started with my new mentor last week, which was great.
Have we discussed that on the show? I can't remember.
No, we haven't. No, I don't think so. So just to explain it, I applied for this mentorship with the Australasian Horror Writers Association, which is a thing here in Australia. They're just a whole bunch of horror nerds that get together and share horror stories and things like that, which is awesome. And they had this mentorship that they advertised. So I applied, and one of the mentors on the list was Shane Armstrong, who's a writer here in Australia. He lives in Queensland. He's made a lot of horror films and some kids animation and other things. So I just thought, what a great opportunity to learn from someone that's some years in front of me, who's done some of that work already.
I've always sort of veered away from having mentors, but I think it's just foolish young pride in early years. But as I get older, I start to realise that perhaps I should have been doing it all along and probably should still be doing it now.
I have no idea myself. I've never had a mentor before, so this is the first for me. And who knows what will come of it, honestly. Other than I've met him now, and he's a great dude. And we're already just getting along. So that's cool in itself,
That's enough.
Yeah. And what about you, Doc? What's been happening?
I've been working too hard, as you know, and I was going to say hating every minute of it, but people at work might see this. No, I love it. I love every second of it. But I've been escaping. I think I said last time I've just been getting into my reading, and I'm on Don Quixote at the moment.
Oh, get out of town.
Have you read Don Quixote?
No, I haven't.
It's a thick one.
It is, isn't it?
Look at that.
Remind me, who wrote Don Quixote?
Cervantes.
Okay.
Who's a Spanish chap. It's kind of considered one of the first, if not the first, novel. It's really a great read. A lot of our early episodes were on that mateship and the sort of the bromances and that sort of thing.
That's right.
This is one of the first bromances between Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, sorry. I don't know how I've gone this long in my life without reading it. It's great. Once I'm done, I'll give you a proper review.
Great, because that's got to be probably on my list as well, and I've never read it. Whatever, put that up there with The Count of Monte Cristo and all sorts of things like that. Which have you? I mean, there's just so many. There's so many classics.
It's a bit distressing because you can never get through them all in your life. So you've really got to be selective about what you decide to read.
And yet, every single Stephen King book that comes out, I will read it.
I've not read any Stephen King book ever, but I do want to because I know he's a master.
Yes.
But I think I'm trying to knock over the original masters first.
You're starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's great. And so really the first sort of what they consider a novel in the current form, that's possibly one of the first. Is that what you're saying?
I don't want to be quoted on this, but yes.
Could you imagine knowing that you were doing the first of something that big, something that was going to change the world to that degree?
Well, I think the style of it is, it seems like he's almost chanced upon writing a novel because it starts off as quite just an episode, like a little short ditty about an adventure of this chap, and then you can see it evolves, and it's kind of it's an episodic story. So there's just little stories within stories, and that just pieces all together. So it's almost as if it just became a novel, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Because I guess before that you would have had like poetic sagas and things like this that were around, but this is the first of its kind of form.
Kinda. I'm sure all my uni mates will be throwing tomatoes.
Like, what the hell?
What's he talking about?
What is Doc on about? That's great. I love it. And 50 episodes, Doc.
Congratulations.
Congrats, dude.
They said we'd never make it.
Those people.
That was us that said that. We're the only ones watching anyway.
That's right. All 2 subscribers.
No, 50 episodes, and the bittersweet thing is I'm really happy to get to 50, but we had talked about our 50th episode being live in studio, hadn't we? So we're looking forward to that. Yeah.
Hopefully we're just weeks away now. Hopefully not far at all.
Yeah, could even be our next one.
That would be great. 51. 51 still sounds cool. That's a cool number.
Yeah, or maybe we should have done like MIF and like 49 and a half until we get to
we just keep
51.
Increments until we get to 50. Oh, well, we've blown that now, haven't we?
Speaking of blowing it, what has blown Netflix out of the stratosphere is Squid Game. I think we just dive into the waters with the squids. What do you think?
I agree, man. I agree. Squid Game is just a phenomenon, and all of the hype that comes with it is really interesting. But there's also this backstory of, a filmmaker, writer, director who had this incredible concept and spent 10 years trying to get it made, and nobody would do it. Everybody turned him down. Which is just such a. I mean, this is probably. I don't know which studios he was going to. I'm assuming they're all in Korea, but it just feels like a Hollywood story, doesn't it? In some ways, this sleeper cult classic that just can't get made because everybody they just can't see it. They can't see it for what it is. They say no. They say no. Finally, someone has the vision to say yes, and it not only is successful, it is the most successful thing that's been made on Netflix.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Already?
It's number 1 in 90 countries on Netflix.
Wow. Well, I didn't know that backstory of the director or anything, so I only heard about it by you and others mentioning Squid Games and doing little squid emojis in your texts and this sort of crap, and I hadn't heard the hype, and then all of a sudden watched the first one and then had to binge it.
Every now and again we get reminders that all the people who say that they know how this works have no idea how this works.
That's
and
true.
This is one of them. This is one of those reminders.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, let's what's it about? Are we going to go with our usual cop out of just reading IMDb?
Yes, please. Because I think it's going to be terrible and I can't wait.
Okay, well, summaries. We'll just say the first thing that it says here. Hundreds of cash-strapped players accept a strange invitation to compete in children's games. Inside, a tempting prize awaits with deadly high stakes. A survival game that has a whopping 45.6 billion won. Is that how you say it? Won?
I think so. I don't know.
$45.6 billion prize at stake. That's it. There's a bit more, though, underneath that. I'll read that. A story of people who fail at life for various reasons, but suddenly receive a mysterious invitation to participate in a survival game to win more than 38 million US dollars. So they've changed it to US dollars.
They've converted it because nobody understands what 45.6 billion won means.
No one could pronounce it, perhaps.
Yeah.
The game takes place at an unknown location and the participants are locked up until there is a final winner. The story will incorporate popular children's games from the 1970s and 80s of Korea, such as Squid Game, literal translation of its Korean name, which is a type of tag where offense and defense use a squid-shaped board drawn in the dirt.
Which, by the way, I had that game described to me via this show 2 or 3 times. Probably 3 times by the end of the season, and I still have no idea how that game works. It just makes no sense to me.
No, it didn't to me either. Although I read just 5 minutes before we started recording, I read a perfect description of it, which was... I'm not going to do it justice, but basically you just have to get from one end into the squid's head, and if you're the attacker, meaning you're trying to get there, you've got to hop on one leg.
Okay. Yeah,
something
cool.
like that.
Yeah, and but luckily every other game in this show is very easy to understand, and except for one thing, I noticed that they aside from one of the marble games, almost all of them were variations of marbles that I've never seen played before. There was just one that I recognized in there from when I was a kid, which is basically put all your marbles in the circle and try to bomb them out of the circle. That was the one I used to play.
I'd never seen that one.
Okay.
I don't think I played with marbles. I had marbles, but I think I just rolled them around. I didn't know there were other things you could do with them.
Oh, we went through a full phase in primary school where all the boys had marbles, and they were like coveted marbles, and all around, like you'd go out at recess, and there was the bombing game, but that was kind of like a way to lose all your marbles and not feel very satisfied about it. Whereas it was a lot better to play sort of one-on-one, where you shoot your marble out into the middle of nowhere and then basically you play tag, like you kind of go after each other and try and hit that other person's marble so you can win it.
No, that's all foreign to me.
Okay, yeah.
I suppose that's where the saying "lost your marbles" comes from.
Yes, I think so.
Doesn't quite match, but...
You know, I guess it was one of those phases like having a yo-yo. Maybe like every 7 years there's like a 1 year where the kids all play marbles.
Yep, and you got the year.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. I got the hula hoops.
You got the hula hoops. Oh, dude, that's a rough one.
Yeah. So tell me, I don't think I have to ask, because you're at least half Korean in my book. So you seem to like everything that comes out of there. So I'm assuming that you have loved this, and I want to know if you loved it from the get-go, or did it creep up on you? Tell me your story about getting into Squid Game.
I loved it from the get-go. The second I pressed play on this thing, I was hooked. And it has a familiar Korean setup. There's something that we've talked about Korean cinema and Korean shows before, and there's something about the highly unlikable, kind of sleazy working class dude who just cannot seem to succeed and is questionable in every decision and choice that he makes, and yet you come to root for and love, and it's in this show. We've talked about it in some other films, which we'll probably talk about in this episode, but yeah, that stereotype or that archetype that they have in a lot of Korean shows is something that I love. Yeah,
it had a familiar feel. It felt like you were going back into some Parasite universe.
Totally.
Or one of the other rippers, and just putting on a comfy pair of tracksuit pants. I started though, and it was audio dubbed. So I turned it on, played it, and for the first 5 minutes, I was getting not quite American accents, but really odd,
Awful.
overdubbed accents, and it did funny things to the rest of the soundtrack, and it was awful. And I'm thinking, surely not. Surely this is not how it's meant to be consumed. And then I realised that, I went to the settings and changed it, but I don't know whose decision it was. I've certainly never chosen to have it dubbed.
Yeah. Mine was automatically on Korean English subtitles with the Korean, sound and language on there. And I don't know why it would do the opposite to you, but I know a lot of people are watching this with the dubbed sound because they don't want to read subtitles.
Maybe that's why. Maybe it's because Netflix would go on algorithms. Maybe they've discovered that most people want to hear the English and therefore make that the default or something. Because it surprised me. I was devastated. But then on the upside, when I had the victory of changing it up, it just felt like then I'd really entered into the universe, and it was such a good feeling. And from there, it had me.
I love it. That's great. It just reminds me. I saw a quote from Bong Joon-ho, who did Parasite, was the director and writer of that. That was in the news recently about the 1 inch tall barrier. Did you see that?
No.
He was basically saying that once people can get past and can overcome the 1 inch tall barrier of subtitles, you'll be introduced to this world of amazing stories. And it's so true. But so many people can't get past it.
You don't even realise they're there after a while, do you? You just don't. And you luxuriate in the sounds of the voices, the intonations, and all of that brings a level to it. And it's more evocative than English speakers,
Absolutely.
the Korean language.
The original performances, the comedy that comes through with those, that the American actors that are trying to nail that would be, I just don't even know how that process works. But it's going to be wrong. It's going to be off.
Look, I understand them doing it, a generation ago maybe, but now it shouldn't even be countenanced.
Totally agree. And your initial thoughts beyond after that?
Absolutely loved it. I just loved his character. So let's start stuffing up the names. But Gi-hun?
Yep, Gi-hun is what I've got.
Yep.
That's my crappy pronunciation as well.
Okay, let's be consistent in crappiness.
Okay.
He was just so relatable. I know he was a deadbeat, but you just felt for him straight away, and you're going with him to the track and winning and losing, and you just can't help but be on his side. And then when he wins the money and loses it again, and it's this big roller coaster, and it's the character is set up so beautifully. You really know so much about him before you even start. So that was just a great intro.
What a funny bastard. And I think, whenever somebody goes out, whenever you see a character like this, even though they're a loser on one level, like he's just, this guy's not going to win at life the way he's going, right?
Yeah.
You've got to admire his passion, I think. Everything he does, he's just, he's going after it in the moment, full throttle.
He's all in.
He's all in all the time.
Yeah.
There's something about that. What a great character, Mm-hmm. And even though it's like watching a train wreck, you can't take your eyes off him, and you need to see what he's going to do next. And you don't get these characters that often that are that sort of balls out from the very start. And that's one of the things that I really appreciated about the show. And in fact, all of the characters that you come across, there's very little subtlety in terms of like, oh, that's a sort of melancholy person who's gonna take 4 episodes to develop. Like they're all
balls out.
They're all balls out right from the start.
Yeah. But what a nice little ensemble. All of these hard luck stories. How many of the ones that we really care about? There's the girl Sae-byuk.
Yep. Sae-byuk.
There's Sang-woo, who's his best mate.
From childhood.
And there's Ali Abdul from Pakistan.
Yep, who's just the nice guy, strong man of the group.
Yeah, and like those ones and their backstories.
Plus Plus the old man, Il-nam. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah, although we meet him when we're in there, don't we?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, him and a couple of others, getting to know intimately those players early on, you really get a sense of what's at stake with all of them, don't you? And you say, well, I'm rooting for this guy, but hang on, I'm also rooting for this one and this one and this one, and they can't all win. And then you look around at the rest of the crowd and you think, well, each one of them is going to have the same story. This is a horror show about to happen.
Yes. I think once you realise in that, is it the first episode? It's it's the end of the first episode where they play the first game, and you realise that a lot of people are going to die each time they play a game. You start to come to terms with this idea that these characters you are growing to love, you're also going to watch them die, and you're doing that process in your head at the same time. You're growing to love them, knowing that very soon you'll be watching them die, which is a really interesting place to be, because they often, in shows and movies, they kind of, they try to sneak the death on you, you know, like they try to get you to love them so that they can surprise you by killing them an episode later. And this show, you know exactly what's coming. You know there's going to be one winner. You know what the format is.
Yeah, you do. And you keep watching.
And you keep watching.
I think some people, it's not for everyone. I don't think. Like, the violence is pretty steep.
It is.
Look behind you at all that blood on the staircases.
Yeah.
Like, it is hard to watch. So you want to make sure it's you look at the rating before you step into it.
And I guess even though we sort of have talked about it a little bit, just for the people who haven't seen this show yet and for some reason are watching this or listening to this, every episode almost in this there's a new game played, and every time there's a game played, it's a child's game, and anyone who doesn't finish the game is killed. Like, you either win or you're dead. That's the way this works. And there's something, like, you can see where that idea comes from. But there's something really macabre and interesting about playing kids' games where the stakes are, well, it's like keepsies for real, you know?
And you can see the setup, that initial scene when they're as young boys playing the game. And that said quite a lot, actually, didn't it? Because our hero won the game, and it was like the highlight of his life, and he's the epitome of someone who peaked way, way too early by winning Squid Game.
That's right.
And his mate went on to supposedly do great things, although we see that that's not all that it seems. But that really, really sets it up, and I think even then you can see that there's violence, innate violence in that type of setup, and we're going to actually see it play out.
Absolutely. Hey, do you want to talk about, just real quick, the interesting plot twist? It's not really a twist. It's sort of a little deviation.
Subplot, sort of.
Oh, it's like episode 2, they leave the game.
Yeah.
Which I just thought was really interesting. Like, normally, and this would be, this would be the way you would do it, I'm thinking. You get everybody in there, and then every episode they play a game, and people die until you get to the end. But what happens in episode 2 is they all have this option, the players, to vote to not play anymore, and they do, and they win enough votes. Actually, just one vote, I think it is the decider, and they all go home. But then, and I think this really is sort of turning the screw on this idea of the hopelessness of this addiction that these people have. They all decide to go back. It's incredible.
That was probably, in hindsight, the most creative part of the script, I think, as far as the plot goes.
I agree.
Like, it really was unexpected, but it added such a layer, because you go back into the world and see that the real world juxtaposed against that fake world. You get more insight into the characters, and when they go back, the desperation is just doubled down, isn't it? And they pretty much all go back from memory. Yeah.
I think they lose just a small percentage of them. The rest all come back.
It reminded me of Joseph Campbell. I think you like Joseph Campbell's Hero Journey, don't you? I don't like it so much.
I haven't really studied it so much, no, but I know of it.
Yeah, I haven't studied it greatly either, but one of his plot points, I guess, is the refusal of the call. Yeah, when you are called to adventure and then refuse that call and then eventually go back. You say yes, maybe not, and then okay.
That's a great call. And it's just done in such a noticeable way here where, like, literally everybody leaves, whereas normally that refusal of the call is the main character, saying, it's like Ridley from Alien saying, actually, I don't, like, the last thing I want is to go back anywhere where those things are, and then she gets talked into it.
Yeah, this was a group refusal.
It's a group refusal. Yeah.
They voted to refuse the call.
The talking into it part is just that their lives are so freaking terrible in reality, or at least they think they are.
Yeah.
Although you'd question that anything's as bad as what happens within the game.
Yeah, although it's, if you've got nothing to lose, like his best mate Sang-woo, he was going to kill himself clearly, like it was pretty clear.
Yeah.
Why not go into the game?
It's a good point. And you hear horrible stories about people who go to casinos, gamble the last of their money, and then commit suicide. You hear these stories, so I suppose that's the level of desperation and addiction that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And if that were the case, and you had a chance to play a child's game and maybe win it all, would you do it?
Not me, but conceivably.
Probably not me, but yes.
So you talked about the structure, and it is, every episode is a new game, and you're really looking forward, I think, in every episode to that part of it, aren't you? That's the point. To
the whatever maniacal, twisted, nasty thing they're going to come up with next. Yeah.
Yeah. In that way, I guess we are just as bad as the people who are paying to watch that whole thing play out. So if you want to get all meta,
it's the Black Mirror.
Yeah, it is, because we are paying our $14 a month or whatever Netflix costs these days.
We are
to watch people get,
Not only that, 90 countries around the world have placed this show as number one, like the show that they all want to watch the most. We've all signed up to be the mob who will watch the gladiators take each other out.
It's as old as that, isn't it? Like it's like the Romans, with the lions and the Catholics at the Colosseum.
It's like Russell Crowe saying, "Are you not entertained?"
Yeah. Well, okay. We loved it, and we loved all those characters. We could dive into any one of them forever. Was there anything that fell flat throughout? Let's forget the last episode. We'll talk about that at the end. And I'm not suggesting that falls flat at this stage. I'm just saying let's forget it.
We'll leave that to later.
Just to open up that convo, I think some of the subplots aren't quite as strong as the main game. Like there's the organ harvesting, operation that's happening. There's the policeman in search of his brother.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't think any of that was bad, but I would argue it's a bit of a sideshow that I was okay with, but could have done without too.
I agree. And it doesn't really add up to much in the end, does it? There's a lot of investigating going on around the place. And I suppose the investigating of that police officer gives you a little bit of a backstory as to the back end of this operation, how it's all coming together. But do we need that? Yeah, I sort of agree. Like, it was okay. It was okay. You know the bit that bothered me the most was around episode... How many were there? Were there 7 in total or 8? I'm trying to remember.
Was there 9, maybe?
Ooh. Great question.
There's 9. There's 9 episodes.
Okay, so around then, it must be 7 or 8. The VIPs arrive.
Ooh, yep.
And that was the worst thing ever. Because
it was.
It was just horribly written and performed for these particularly the American guy was really bad. But even there was a British guy and someone who sounded like he was Danish or something. I don't know. But like there was this group of rich white dudes and they were just so, their dialogue was so on the nose and their performance was just, I found it really cringeworthy. I had a problem with that.
Well, I completely agree. And just to fast forward to it reminds me of, it kind of reminded me of Eyes Wide Shut,
Mm-hmm.
It's probably obvious they all had masks on.
Yeah, absolutely.
That creepiness, but not as good. What it did make me think was it's kind of like the tables turn. So if we've grown up on English speaking films in Hollywood and whatever, and you'll have other nationalities completely caricatured.
Yes.
Which may seem perfectly authentic to us.
Yes.
And they're probably, when we see an Aussie, an Aussie in an American film, it's like a cliche. So this is really what the Koreans imagine Americans to be like, or the English or whatever.
Counterpoint. So I totally agree that could be possibly what's going on here. And I had a friend tell me, because I made this point with him, that this bothered me so much. And he was like, well, I kind of loved it because I think it was all done on purpose, to sort of point out how obnoxious and, I don't know, cliched that rich American people can seem to them in Korea, you know what I mean? So like it was an interesting way to look at it. Like, okay, so maybe the point is made here. I'm going to make these guys look as obnoxious as they seem. I'm going to sort of make caricatures of them.
And that's all they were doing in the film. Like they were a device rather than a fleshed out troupe of players.
Yes, absolutely. But as an Australian watching, I found it really hard to watch. Those were the scenes that made me cringe the most. Everything else I just loved. And then I'd get to those and go, oh, God, what's going on here?
No, it was hard.
Yeah.
What was quite nice, though, was that one moment where the real disgusting one, was unmasked.
Yeah, I agree.
That was really compelling. So they were cliched up until then. They're masked, they're purposely just symbolic, and then all of a sudden you've got this real man with a real face and a real fat body, scared, and that was quite real, and probably more real for having been introduced as a cliche to begin with.
Yes, the other thing that was funny too is I was all bothered by the way these characters were coming across, and my friend that I was talking with it about just goes, what really bothered me is like, how on earth are they going to drink those glasses of wine with those masks on? And I was like, great point. How are they going to do that? That's funny. But it did feel like on a lot of levels, those scenes were a bit of a cliche, and it makes you wonder how intentional that was. So maybe we should err on the side of it was intentional, and there's, we're meant to take it that way.
I think that and other bits were there as signposts, and as I said, devices more than anything anyway. So maybe the thing about them not being able to drink is a fair point to indicate that the filmmakers don't really care about that sort of stuff. The other example I'm thinking is when the organ harvesting racket is going on and you see on the CTV cameras, people running through corridors and even when the policeman guy is running through corridors, in this sort of world, you would just think that that would be seen. Like I know they show them erasing it, but that all just seems so far-fetched.
Yeah.
That they'd be able to follow them and erase them just in time without being caught by all the other faceless men there. So that made me think, well, mate, just don't take it too seriously. Like
Yes.
The point they're making is that there's stuff happening behind the scenes.
Yes.
They're doing enough to get that story across, but, don't worry about the details.
And what that did give you before the policeman sort of uncovers it is this sense of depth, like this world has existed for a while, long enough for a marketplace to kind of grow around these dead bodies. Like you definitely get that sense from it. And like that these games and this little weird maze that's behind me has been cleaned and repainted so many times over the years and been added to and built out.
With the cop,
Yeah,
less convincing the whole storyline, but I knew from almost the outset, I reckon, that, spoiler alert, if we haven't said it.
we have.
That the top dog was his brother. Like,
Did you? I didn't pick that up.
Okay.
I didn't. I mean, but it when you see it, you're like, oh, it's his brother, of course. Makes sense. Nope, didn't pick that up. I really, honestly, up until the moment that we figure it all out, was thinking that he was going to find his brother in the files somewhere and that he would have died. And then actually you realize he's a winner. And then I expected he was going to be one of the rich people coming in, not the top dog. But you saw it from the beginning. It's cool.
Well, I probably would have liked your version better. But maybe that's just because it went against what my instinct was. But
yeah.
Another thing that is for sure that I know just as well as I knew that is that he's back, baby, in the next season.
Yes, I agree. The cop, you mean?
The cop, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, he got shot in the shoulder and fell off a cliff. Like, that's a classic. How many times have we seen that in films?
Yeah, shot in the shoulder and fell off a cliff into water. Yeah.
That guy's coming back.
He's back already.
He's barely wounded.
In the studio.
Yeah.
Any high points we want to talk about throughout that deserve particular mention?
Yes. The gang boo, I can't say it, gang boo episode where they play marbles.
Yes.
Was devastating. It was such a good episode. It was wonderful because if you remember the episode before that, they had turned them all into teams by making them play tug of war and become teams of 10. So the players had just gotten used to this idea of being in teams. And then they say, choose the one person that's going to be like your best bud going through this, and you're going to be a team. You're going to become a pair. And they do that only to discover that only one of them will survive. They're actually going to be playing against each other. It was so clever because it's writing the emotions of the characters in the show, but also the audience.
It's brutal. Couldn't agree more. And each of one of those mini narratives, particularly the main characters, awful.
And just a nod to the grand ending, the big ending here. I thought it was really clever that the old guy kept talking about how that was his neighborhood. It looked just like his neighborhood and how his house should be just around the corner. Very cool. Absolutely.
I thought the same. When we know what we know at the end and you look back on that adds a whole dimension to it, doesn't it? That he's the grand designer here. So it would have been his neighborhood, no doubt.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then you start thinking, well, how did he know these tips about tug of war? Well, how many games of tug of war has this guy seen play out? And he's analyzed it. He knows exactly what works and what doesn't in a game of tug of war.
Yeah.
Nasty. Yeah.
That was great, that moment. I have to say, though, that in general, the extra layer of Il-nam, I think he's called Il-nam?
Yeah.
Of him being revealed as the mastermind, I'm not sure I needed that. I agree completely that it made that scene in hindsight look so great, and it made you rethink a lot of stuff that happened in the film. But one part of me thought it was getting just a little bit too tricksy.
Yeah. And you know what? Look, let's talk about reminds me of for a second, because I've got one that's perfect for this. It really made me think of Old Boy. And I know I've talked about Old Boy before, but you do have this sense of a wealthy person who's basically playing chess with people who he can afford to move around however he wants. And it all stems back to his childhood and trauma there. And then you get right to the end and you discover that there's that link. The person who you least expected, was there all along pulling the strings. And it just feels, it feels like a theme that we've seen in Korean films, and particularly in Old Boy as such a classic. It made me think about that for sure.
That's a great reference. Yeah, I can see it completely. As you were talking that through, actually, I'm thinking, yes, I've seen that play out in the film too, and I'm trying to think what it is. And the film I was thinking of was the American version of Old Boy. So I'm seeing all these different people because I haven't seen the Korean version yet. I can't get it anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I know it from the other version, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, and even that sense of that scene where he walks into his whatever apartment that's empty, and they have the discussion about why he did it all, and that's Old Boy as well. You get that showdown at the end.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes me perhaps like that ending a little bit more. It feels like it's maybe a trope in, well, not just Korean cinema, in any storytelling, I suppose.
Yeah.
But the fact
Something they seem to do quite well, though, sort of the big twist and that whole class warfare thing of like the wealthy pulling the strings on all of the lower socioeconomic classes.
Well, now that you mention that, let's go straight into Director Bong and
Parasite.
Well,
Oh no, Snowpiercer.
I'm just going to say Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Parasite,
Totally.
Parasite too, tonally, but Snowpiercer as far as the different classes and the struggles in amongst them.
Absolutely, and the horrors committed on those lower class people. Yeah, that's a great call. Well, are we talking references now? Because I've got a bunch. Should we?
I think we can jump around, but unless there's one that has come up naturally, we probably should just talk about the very ending. Because
Yeah, great call.
it took a strange turn. So we expected that our hero would win, I think. So, and he did, and there was quite an emotive, moment between him and his mate who he fought against, and that was all great. But that was finished early in the last episode, and then we go on to the big reveal of the old man. But,
Can I just say first though, I was quietly rooting for one of the other characters to win.
were you
And I'll tell you why. I'm just gonna find her name.
a specific? Oh well,
Yes.
Okay. We'll say no more because you're talking about
Sae-byuk.
Sae-byuk because she's darling of the screen. She's
the
wonderful.
Darling of the screen, wonderful, but also the only character that was not a selfish bastard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she actually was in there for a reason for other people. Like she really, really, really wanted to get her mum and little brother sorted out, and that was her reason to be there. The rest had all found they were all sinners, and so there was part of me going, I wonder if they're going to play that angle and kill off our main character and have Sae-byuk be the winner at the end. But I'm glad they didn't, actually.
I think 2 points. I think it would be unthinkable to kill off that main character. His face, that it will become iconic, that shot of him smiling, in the, when they're getting their picture taken.
Yes, I agree.
It's such a beautiful bloody face and expressive. I just don't think you could get rid of it. I know they got rid of Ned Stark early in Game of Thrones, but I don't know how they could kill him off. That said, she is mesmerising, and just the character was great. The performance was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I really thought that maybe they'd find a way for them both to get out.
Yeah, that was another thing I was entertaining, whether the two of them would team up in some way or tie or something like that. But no, the show's too brutal for that sort of stuff. No. And even the question mark of like whether he's going to go back into the show as either a player or a VIP is really interesting.
So now we're talking the very ending, and you've got one thing that happens is he dyes his hair red. Mm-hmm. I read somewhere that the writer, when questioned why, that was meant to represent his anger or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if anything, it feels like he's sort of fulfilled his need as opposed to his want by that point. Like the characters come around to being who he needs to be.
But then what happens at the end? So like he's off to see his daughter in America. Yeah, that's what's happening.
Good bloke, good move.
Yeah, good bloke, good move. A bit late coming.
A little.
Yeah, a little bit late coming.
He did spend a year being a bum with millions of dollars in the bank,
which he could easily have gone and given us some Korean fried chicken during that time and done a lot of other good deeds. But I was looking all series. I'm looking forward to him doing this at the end, like Daddy Warbucks. But that doesn't happen. But then finally, yes, he gets his life together, goes on the plane, and then gets the call. And in response to being player 456 being summoned again, he turns around and comes back and turns his back on going to see his daughter
Yeah.
to avenge the Squid Gamers.
Which tells me that he's learned nothing in the end.
Yeah.
So you think maybe he has. Maybe he's got his shit together finally. And he's going off to see his daughter, which is the right thing to do. He looks all like he's doing smart business things with his money. No, he's still going to gamble it all. But this time it's revenge instead of like sheer desperation to somehow claw his way back up to the top financially.
Yeah, that's right.
Crazy.
We've had a Danish Liam Neeson. Now we've got a Korean Liam Neeson in the making.
Beautiful. Beautiful. When that moment happens, I did sit back and just go, you're not going to survive this twice. Like, how lucky is this person to have gotten through the first time?
Yeah.
Sheer dumb luck. There was no skill involved. It was just dumb luck the whole way through. And now he's going to go back in. Wow.
It was dumb luck, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because like the first time he was saved, the marbles, he cheated.
Yes.
The tug of war, the old bloke knew what he was doing. The last game, which was brutal.
The glass.
The glass.
He was just at the back of the line. He just got lucky.
Got lucky, and he wasn't even going to take. He was going to take number one, and some other dude just begged him to change. So he nothing off his own bat. Pretty crazy.
He really was crap, but he made it through.
So he's just as big a dope in the game as out of it. But we love him.
That's right. But he's lovable. That's his winning thing. What this whole scenario reminds me of is, and there's a whole string of these films, is the Hunger Games. Cannot not bring up the Hunger Games. And with the Hunger Games comes Battle Royale, which is the Japanese teen slaughter fest, which is in the vein of Hunger Games, although it came before Hunger Games, and there's a bit of like, did Hunger Games steal that? I don't know about any of that, but I think the concept's kind of older than both of them anyway, so I don't know if it really matters. And I'll throw a third one in there, The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Stephen King story from 1987.
I haven't seen The Running Man, but...
And a fourth one, Hard Target, 1993, Jean-Claude Van Damme. All of those are rippers, and they're all regular people thrown into battle against other regular people, all for the enjoyment of wealthy psychopaths, basically.
It's exactly the same. And the fact that those scenarios just play out over and over again, and it stems from other things like The Lord of the Flies, for example, or any million, a million stories. But we love them as a species, don't we? It goes back to Darwin, like survival of the fittest.
Yes.
We're just infatuated by watching that play out, I suppose.
And you know what? Usually in these stories, it's the most angelic or like the most redeemable human wins in the end. But actually what I like about Squid Game is that that's not really the case. He's not, because if that were the case, it would be Sae-byok who would win. You know, she's the one with the least sin. So she should win the game of humans fighting each other to the death. But no. And I think that's great.
So what is it that's different about Squid Game? I'd argue it's at least as good and better than some of the ones you've reeled off. And Hunger Games was fine. I didn't mind it. But Squid Game's just more fun. And I'd put it down to the main actor. Because he's flawed, we just root for him and, feel his journey so much. And I think that's what gets us.
I think maybe why it appeals today is that, deep down Americans are kind of puritanical and they need their heroes to be saints. And Koreans don't have that problem. And in this day and age, I think we've seen the Hollywood format play out for long enough that actually it's refreshing to see real flawed characters in these, but still within genre, like within entertaining stories that are, fun to watch. But we're seeing flawed characters that you would normally only get in like an indie drama or something elsewhere.
I'd suggest that you get the flawed characters in Hollywood, but they're not as intricately displayed. And, it's just cliched, smokes too much, drinks too much, paying alimony, to the ex-wife. Character dot points rather than them being so relatable.
It's changing too. Like, shows like Succession are interesting. That's a family full of flawed characters. So like it is shifting.
So what have we done? We've done Hunger Games, obvious. Some of the Snowpiercer and that sort of thing, fairly obvious. I've got a couple of random ones, and this goes to the violence, like in that red light, green light, first game, like that's really the one that I think really drags us all in. Because that is just absolutely insanely brutal. And that's the one where if the motion detector with that big dummy with the funny eyes picks up that you're moving when you're not meant to be, snipers from everywhere just shoot you dead.
Yeah.
So that reminded me of the awful scene, and the only scene I remember from Schindler's List, where is it Ralph Fiennes, I think, is on a balcony just taking pot shots at people. So completely different tone, awful tone in that case, but just horrific in a similar way. So that was one, and then the other one that's more obscure is Luis Buñuel, who I've mentioned several times in I think different movies, but this is one I saw recently called The Phantom of Liberty, which was a mid-70s French film, and there's a scene there where there's a sniper in this big building in Paris, just taking pot shots at people in the city, and the tone of that one is so quirky because it's not really done in the Schindler's List way. This one was more just almost mundane, like a normal day, and you don't know how to feel about it. The idea of depersonalizing death like that was consistent across them all.
Yeah, it's that sort of meaningless death. That was that sort of blasé approach to just killing people, and it's seemingly random. It's horrifying, isn't it? I have one last one that I wanted to mention, and it just popped into my head as I was thinking about this film earlier today. This incredible film from the 90s, I think, called The Cube. Did you ever see that? Yeah,
I nearly mentioned that myself. It reminded me a lot of it, and the vision behind you somehow reminds me of it as well, because they feel like you're trapped in a cube.
And I think the thing that is different about this show from the Hunger Games and some of these other references that we've mentioned is the game element of it. I mean, those other ones have games in them, but they're brutal, It's all about fighting. Whereas this has this playful quality to it that's really disturbing, and that's what you get in The Cube. Like, every one of those Pandora's box cube thingos that they have has a riddle to it, and you have to solve the numbers on the edges of them all to figure out the pattern that they're all moving in. Some of them will kill you, some of them won't, in different ways. And it also had that element of, we're going to drop a bunch of random people in, seemingly random. However, if they all work together, they have the skills to solve this thing. It was pretty cool. It was a cool film.
It was a cool film, was it? Vincent Natali, I've got a feeling his name was the director.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, that's one of my favourites. That's a great call.
I haven't seen it for years, but yeah, it just popped straight back into my head. And could they be making?
There was a sequel already, I think.
Okay, no. There's a game show called The Cube. For a second there, I thought they were remaking it. What a ripper that film was.
I reckon that film would be responsible for several lesser-known films that we've probably seen and forgotten or not bothered seeing throughout the late 90s, perhaps, and onwards.
It was just called Cube, 97. Vincenzo Natali.
What did I say? Vincent. I got close.
Yeah, you were very close. What a ripper.
Yeah, that is a ripper.
I don't know what that guy's made since, but I'm sure people threw money at him after that, because it was a great film.
I'm sure I've seen others of his. I can't remember if I was as happy or not.
Yeah, okay. So he's done a lot of TV. He did a bit of Hannibal. There was a film called Cypher Splice, which was
yes.
I think that was like a horror sci-fi.
Is that with the Queen's Gambit actress?
I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So he's done some stuff. He's done all right. Good stuff.
Well, He could have stopped at the cube and he would have done his
Yeah.
work. I've got probably one more, and I think then I'm done. Westworld, I'm thinking of the series, the recent series,
Yep.
on the basis of the world as a game, and all the players in that game really just there for the pleasure of the cliched rich white blokes, mainly the moneyed
Yes.
white blokes coming in to shoot whoever they want and do whatever they want to the characters.
To rape, murder, and pillage. Yeah, that's a great call. Actually, Vincenzo has directed 2 episodes of Westworld, so
Really?
crossover. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Wow. Reminds me of Westworld in another way that I'm a bit frightened of.
Okay.
And that is with Westworld in season 1, you have a really tight, closed story. Like the world is there and you really can't see outside of it. And the big reveal is, what are the mechanics outside of this world and who's pulling the strings. And I feel that we get a very similar expose in Squid Game. Mm-hmm. As the Westworld universe over the following seasons expanded and starts to go outside of that little actual Westworld and everything starts getting weird, it started losing its punch to me. And I'm just afraid that this Squid Game story is going to go beyond that and try and get more and more clever.
Yeah.
And I think that's what started to annoy me in the last episode, where they try to build layer upon layer of storyline and meaning.
Great call. Yeah. And I totally agree about Westworld. That was a banging first season. It was incredible, that world that we were brought into. And once they expanded it, it lost a whole bunch of its magic. Totally agree. The only thing I can say for this is that I will trust in the Koreans for now and hope for the best.
Yep, I agree.
But I agree. It's a worry. I know exactly what you're saying.
We didn't mention Truman Show.
Yeah. Good call.
Not much to say, but it's a reality TV show where we all just have fun watching other people's sufferings.
Exactly. Well, Doc, I think we've covered, well, at least everything that I could think of to say about the show.
I don't think we have. I think we could go all night because you could deep dive into any one of the characters that we haven't even mentioned.
True.
The bad guy, the crazy other chick, whatever her name was.
The crazy other chick was incredible. Her and Jok-soo.
Yeah.
What a couple.
All amazing, but we haven't got all night and we've gone over. So I think for the benefit of ourselves and our viewers and listeners, I think we wrap it up.
We should wrap it up. Brilliant. Well, episode 50 done.
Done. Congratulations.
Congrats,
Century.
Doc.
Hope to see you in the studio soon.
Absolutely. All right. Cheers, Doc. See you next time.
Bye.